Hello, my name is Sebastian Velasco, and alongside three of my classmates, we will be discussing the project Boola, Katitjin, which is a building in Western Australia at Murdoch University. And some highlights of this building is that it is the biggest wooden building in Western Australia, as well as having huge ties to the cultural people of the land, which has made it a very important university to the cultural people of Australia, the First Nations people. So without further ado, let's begin.
Hello everyone, I'm Igor and I'm presenting the project scope management part of our analysis of Boola Katitjin project. So let's start with a quick overview of the chapter. Basically, the project scope management plan documents how the project scope will be defined, validated and controlled throughout the project lifecycle. In this slide you can see the diagram of the structure of this part taken from the PMBOK guideline, 6th edition. You can see there are 6 major parts, every one of which I'm going to cover shortly in my presentation. So let's start with the first one, planning scope management. For Boola Katitjin, scope planning was driven by Murdoch University's strategic objectives and Green Star, 6-star certification requirements for sustainability. You can see the plan scope management flow in the slide, again taken from PMBOK. So this basically the objectives by the Murdoch University and Green Star requirements basically set the framework for how scope would be managed across the project. So part 2 is collect requirements. They were mainly gathered from stakeholders, and it was basically a duality of sustainability requirements and functionality requirements. Sustainability was defined by the 6-star requirements, and then the functionality was set by the university itself to make the building essentially integrated into the university infrastructure. You can see the summary in the table in the slide. So part 3 was define scope. The project scope was defined around delivering a landmark education building, meeting all the sustainability standards. Key deliverables included flexible learning spaces, advanced sustainability system, and integrated technology infrastructure. So clear definition of the scope was essential due to the publicity of the project. Again, you can see the table of scope breakdown broken into objectives, deliverables, exclusions, and constraints. You can see the details about them. So part 4 was work breakdown structure, probably the biggest part of this scope management plan. And the work breakdown structure that our team assembled contained 7 big deliverables broken down into smaller subtasks. And as you can see, in 1.1, the project started with early contractor involvement engagement, which was essential in such an environment where there were multiple contractors doing different things. And the building opened in February 2023. Part 5 was validating the scope. The key milestone there was the 6-star sustainability certification. You can see the 7 criteria in the slide. Unfortunately, there was not enough documentation on internal validation of these points. So our team had to collect them from open sources, and you can see the validation of criteria in the slide. The last one is control scope. It's basically designed to manage changes to prevent scope creep internally within the project. And changes were expected, so they had to be controlled initially because of the complexity and sustainability of the project. Its main goal is to prevent scope and schedule complications. You can also see the flow diagram for control scope taken from PMBOK in the slide.
Hello, my name is Michael and I'll be presenting project quality management according to sections 8.1, 8.2 and 8.3 of PMBOK. First is the plan quality management. We'll start with the risk register. The major quality risk areas included structural integrity of mass engineered timber components, 5 performance of exposed timber, acoustic performance across 21 teaching spaces, and moisture management during control and service, and the risk register informed the quality planning baseline and drove upfront investment decisions. Enterprise and environmental factors. The planning baseline drawing from the multiple frameworks, including National Construction Code, Green Building Council of Australia, Building Code of Australia, and Western Australia building legislations. These standards are the foundation of all design construction decisions. Next is the benchmarking. The project team benchmarked against international mass timber precedents. European and North American mass engineered timber project were reviewed for the best practice quality standards. The guidelines were adopted for Western Australia climate conditions and locally supply chain constraint and capabilities. Next is the data representations. NDY developed planned and riser spatial principles using digital engineering tools, which allowed for the clash detection between structure and building services, validation of services routing before fabrication, and coordination across architecture, structure, and services disciplines. Test and inspection planning for the whole building included 1,896 mass timber components and hundreds of thousands of fixings to establish inspection on the timber components. Mass manufacturing tolerances were established for GLT and CLT panels, and factory inspections hold-on points were defined before components left European and Australian mills. And quality management plan was based on the structural construction quality, environmental quality, and user experience quality. And the main measurable quality metrics could be seen on the right side. The quality plans was integrated with procurement plan. Specifically, off-site manufacturing quality assurance was completed before shipments, before shipping components overseas. Next is managed quality. The quality plan governs supplier qualifications requirements, including beam coordination protocols, commissioning procedures, Green Star evidence collection requirements. These were incorporated for the multiplex construction management framework. The quality metrics and control measures. Continuous quality measures from design modeling included thermal comfort studies, wind analysis, and shadow modeling, which were fed back into design iterations. NDY digital engineering tools provided ongoing verifications of services compliance against Green Star protocol during the design phase. The new autonomous robotics trial were deployed during the construction in partnership with the University of Technology of Sydney and Oregon. It allowed for precise construction tasks on the live construction site, improving occupational health, safety, including increasing productivity. Supply quality audits were conducted by Australian Timber Manufacturing Has Timber, and in-country audits of Australian timber supplier ensured local supply chain meets equivalent standards. The design was based on the 4 principles of disassembly, sustainability, constructability, and inclusivity. And the quality improvements included the early constructor involvement throughout the design and construction phases. Next is the audit. Third-party commissioning and verification was conducted by the Inhabit, Resolve, and GBCA Green Star verification auditors. These independent auditors verified the quality system were functioning as planned, and quality control. The multiplex document control system was used to ensure quality implications were evaluated before implementation. And inputs to quality control were taken from the installation of inspection records from European and Australian timber mills, concrete pouring inspection records for the lower 2 stories, services commissioning test results, and Green Star evidence documents. Further inspection involved inspection at the milestones for each crane lift of the major GLT beam, installation of final CLT roof panel at the northern plaza ridge, and commissioning of the building natural ventilation systems, and acceptance of the PV panels array. And the hold points were ensured that no progression will be made until the quality was verified. And testing and evaluation. For the post-construction performance testing, several of the tests were included, which are structural load testing, fire resistance testing, acoustic performance testing, soil panel output commissioning, mixed mode ventilation performance verification, TEL desk system integration testing, digital immersive lab equipment commissioning, stormwater harvest and system capture rate verification, and universal accessibility compliance audit. For the data analysis, Green Star as-built submission require comprehensive performance data across all credit categories. NDY building performance modeling was validated against commissioning building data and verified that 90% of the greenhouse gas reduction claimed under Green Star protocol. And quality audits. Post-construction audits were conducted by GBCA, Engineers Australia, World Architecture Festival jury in Australian Institute of Architects and Australian Timber Design Awards.
I'm Jacob Schofield, and this is the communication management portion of the Boola Katitjin project, which has 3 sections. First is the planning of the communications management. This was planned primarily first by identifying major stakeholders in the project, which the communications would be targeted towards. This included the executive Murdoch University staff, including the Vice Chancellor Professor Andrew Deeks, and all the other university executives. It's obviously on their campus, and it has to align with their interests. Also is students. A majority of the communication through Murdoch University and their news updates, everything through the university is targeted towards students because it would be a majority of their studies would take place in it afterwards. And finally, First Nation members, the local Whadjuk Noongar people of that land, were a central group that were collaborated with. Their values were aligned with that of the Boola Katitjin building. Their artworks and art forms were integrated into it, and also just the importance and emphasis on learning which is why the building is called Boola Katitjin, aligned with those First Nations people values. The main methods they communicated with, the things they focused on, were promoting sustainability, leadership in sustainability, which were a lot through the sustainable use of timber because it was mass manufactured. Also, the extreme low waste generated and low carbon footprint during construction. The extreme energy efficiency it was designed for after it would be complete. And systems such as stormwater collection and reuse and natural ventilation that were going to be in the final build. There's also a large emphasis on technology. Both for during construction, were very innovative, were constructing it, especially there was a student project with using a robot to put a lot of the bolts in during construction, which was featured, but also all of the technology features once it was complete, such as the TEL desks and all the new computer rooms and audio-visual rooms that would be included in the complete building. And of course, cultural inclusivity was a central focus, especially because Murdoch University wants to be the first choice for First Nations people as university. So they put it as a central talking point in a lot of their communications. Here's a communications flow diagram for which teams on this project would have communicated with each other. First of all, at the top you have the project manager. Michael Reeve was the senior manager, and Daniel Price was one of the directors. There are several directors on this project. Reporting directly below them were the architects. They were led by lines, but there were also Aspect Studios, Officer Woods, and Fulcrum were other architecture firms that were on this that all had specialization into a certain feature that they wanted in the project. They, of course, directed the engineers, which were in Oricon and NDY, to design those features. And then it was eventually passed down to construction teams, Multiplex, which were incredibly good for this project, and actually performed the execution of this construction project. And then, of course, at the end, it all has to tend down to the university stakeholders, that being the university executives, the First Nations people, the staff and students that would be using the building once it was complete. Next is managing communications. These communications were mainly managed through their information portals and news updates on the Murdoch University website. They also focused mainly on sustainability during construction after it was complete, the learning technologies that would be integrated into the final build that would be available, the accessibility of it, not only the university's values, but the indigenous inclusivity that would be in Boola Katitjin, and traditional design inclusion. Again, they had a lot of these central points that they repeated across communication. Specifically, they promoted 6-star Green Star aspirations, which they did achieve at the end of the project. Their collaboration with prestigious architecture firms like Lions and the Multiplex construction team, the indigenous integration, of course, and the energy efficient designs and sustainability of the project both during and after construction. They also distributed a lot of this information through architecture publications and engineering case studies. On the right is an image which is a sample of the official Boola Katitjin portal, which would have been opened very early to provide information about all these central focuses. Finally, in communications management, there is monitoring communications. To maintain their communication goals, they had to constantly adjust what communications they were providing across the project's timeline. First and foremost was during the construction phase. They of course gave updates on how through the project they were and how according that was to their originally planned timeline, such as 80% completion was one of the headlines of the news. They also gave visual updates on parts that were constructed, especially because it was an interesting topic of constructing with that much timber and on that scale, where they provided a lot of visual views of it at multiple stages and a lot of the challenges or large achievements in timber that they had along the way. The sustainability innovation, including the timber and the reduced carbon footprint during construction, and a lot of the achievements, a lot of the records that this broke in timber beam sizes, the size of the structure. I think it was the largest timber building in Western Australia, and the predicted capacity and uni integration, because it was going to be 60% of the learning space on campus once it was complete. So that was also a large talking point early on. After it was completed, specifically construction, not open yet, a lot of news came out about trying to introduce students to the building that they would soon be using, showing them where it is, what they'll be doing there, how much of their education would be in that building. They introduced them to the new technology in the building, including the technology-enabled learning desks that allow students to connect any device and work with classrooms across the world. And also the AR audiovisual tools and computers that were now in new digital heavy rooms. I think they introduced 21 new rooms with different technologies in that building. And finally, visitor accessibility. They did have an events room that would be used frequently, or that was planned to be used frequently for functions after the fact. And so they started talking about the features of the building and the ability to use this room early on after completion. This room was used a lot. A lot of the post-occupancy communication was about all the functions, seminars, and meetings and such that were occurring in this building because of its prestigious status, because of all of the awards that it gained. They also communicated the new facilities that were inside the building that could be in use now, such as the 2 new food and beverage outlets and the inclusive bathroom facilities and accessibility features. Finally, student support was a big communication subject at the very end, because there were student portals for free use now in the Boola Katitjin building. The student center was moved into Boola Katitjin after it was constructed. It was originally somewhere else on campus. And finally, there were reservable student study spaces and a lot of casual study spaces inside the building that they heavily encourage students to use. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sebastian, and I will be taking us through the stakeholder management plan for the Boola Katitjin. Now, first of all, it is very important to understand that a stakeholder directly influences the outcome of a project. So we need to make sure that we take care of them and understand their needs and demands. PMBOK outlines that the best way to do this is to identify, analyze, and engage with these stakeholders, as we can see here. Through this table, we can see most of the stakeholders involved in this project. I'm not going to say all of them, because there were probably hundreds, but this small table can tell us a little bit about their interest, their power, and most likely why. Some notable groups to take from this are Murdoch University executives, the staff and students of the University of Murdoch, Oricon and NDY, which were some contractors used for this project, and the local Whadjuk people. One of the representatives, Dr. Richard Wally, actually put forward the name Boola Katitjin as a respect for what this building will be and what it represents. Now, the second step of analysis can be done very visually and very easily. On a power interest graph, we can then identify who we need to monitor, which is just be aware of who they are, and who we need to manage closely, who we need to keep happy and make sure that they're actually providing what they need to do. Now, from that table alone, we can understand that there is one group that we need to monitor, one group to keep satisfied, 5 groups to keep informed, about 6 groups in the gray area where they could really be to anywhere, or 7 groups that we needed to manage closely. These people have high power and high interest in this project, and some notable ones are once again the executives of Murdoch University and Oricon and NDY groups. Now, with these important stakeholders comes problems. Some of them have high demand and high power, and they clash. For example, let's say NDY, who is responsible for the timber and wood used for this project, are only focusing on that. Whereas you've got the Murdoch University executives who are really pushing for a certain agenda that doesn't exactly align with NDY, it can create some problems. Another problem with Oricon is actually on their behalf, where they couldn't mathematically prove the design for one of the portals. And this was actually able to be solved through a practical design that was then tested and modulated and implemented later. But their inability to do that initially could create some problems and stress and strain. Now, NDY also had a huge problem, which was that in Western Australia, none of the wood they were supplying was actually legally tested and certified. So they had to go through every single wood and make sure that it could be safe and understood how to deal with it in the case of a fire, which was a first for Western Australia. And as to how specifically all of these groups handle these situations, it's not very clear online. There's not much evidence or research there. But what we can understand is that they did use an iterative design process where they would come back at the start of every week and understand, hey, here's what's going well, here's what's going wrong, and adjust to scope accordingly as the project went on. Which is actually a great way of doing things, as evident by the fact that they finished the project on time. Good job them. And now finally we need to engage with these stakeholders. Let's focus on NDY and Oricon. For example, NDY, they wanted to simply make a really great building and achieve the goals they were going after, which was to reduce carbon emissions and improve the efficiency of the building, which they met. They reduced the carbon emissions by 90% and actually improved the building by 10% more than the margin they were expecting to, which was fantastic. Oricon wanted to test their autonomous design robots, which actually improved the quality of the construction and monitoring of the building, and it proved a great success for them. So thank you for listening to my presentation on the stakeholder management plan.
So the key successes and failures of Boola Katitjin. Let's start with successes. First, it was delivered on time and within budget. The causes of that, as our team inferred, was probably the early contractor involvement of multiplex in design. The second success is that it won multiple major awards, such as the Higher Education and Research category at the 2023 World Architecture Festival, as well as the National Award for Sustainable Architecture. The cause of that would probably be the sustainability requirements, which were set very high from the start. As I said before, they were trying to achieve the 6-star Green Star sustainability certification. And the third success is the world's first autonomous robot on site, which improved health and safety of the workers, as well as the cost and productivity of the whole project. The cause of that was the collaboration of the academia side, which is Murdoch University and the UTS in this case, and the industry, Oricon, as the main structural company. The failures, although they were not published, we just sort of inferred them. The first one is the electronics delivery delays, probably due to supply chains disrupted during COVID-19. And the second one is the erection and fixation of large timber portal frames. It was quite challenging, but the team managed to succeed.
The key challenges and solutions for this project were the unfamiliarity with the mass engineered timber at scale. The solution that the team would manage to provide was to engage with the timber industry and conduct industry workshops, which included the Western Australia Timber Forum. The complex portal frame engineering. The team built a full-scale prototype of one of the connections and breaking it in pieces to understand the behavior of a frame. The fire engineer from the timber building near a bushfire zone. Team sourced and early procured timber from the suppliers, and the bushfire assessment was also taking place early in the design phase to inform architectural decisions. The concealed building services while exposing timber structure was very important for the project, and the solution provided that conditioned air is supplied to the formal teaching spaces through raised floor voids, which has had the benefit of making it easier to adapt layout to accommodate future learning and teaching needs. And the last one is optimizing facade for sustainability and climate response. NDY carrying extensive energy modeling to ensure the optimum facade solutions. The combination of passive design and high-performance building fabric resulted in exceeding National Construction Code Section J performance requirements by 10% and a 90% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions.
As I mentioned earlier, the iterative design process is a fantastic way for designing a big project like this. However, it does have its drawbacks. For example, scope creep is more likely to occur in these design processes. However, as we can see, it did not majorly affect the Boola Katitjin. But should it have affected the Boola Katitjin's progress, some improvements can be to front-load constraints at the start of the project. Understand when things need to be done by, what costs and what team members can actually work towards this, so that as the project is gone, there's no questions, there's no debate, you're saving time, saving money, and having a mutual understanding between everybody. Also including assumptions in that can allow you to understand that, hey, as we're going forward, we're assuming so. As you develop it, you'll understand that you are correct or you are wrong, which can then further influence your decision making as you now understand the project to a larger margin.
Through the investigation of the Boola Katitjin project, these were some of the lessons we learned. First of all was the benefit of focusing on a few main objectives. Boola Katitjin obviously had a few central focuses from the beginning, that being sustainability, technology, and the indigenous integration into that project. And over the course of the project, they repeated this and allowed them to constantly align with the stakeholders they were interested in, have key engagement points to mention in communications and to aim for in quality. And it provided them with the exact metrics that they wanted to achieve during the project and say they had done afterwards. Also was the diversified stakeholders and collaborators they had on the project. The Boola Katitjin project was undertaken by architects and engineers from several different firms that each specialized in a certain technology or feature that Boola Katitjin advertised and wanted to have in this new building. This included technology, acoustics, of course the focus on timber, sustainability guidelines, and more. This allowed centrometrics and risks to be addressed by individual teams with specialized ability for those issues they were on. There was also continuous quality measurement, which they displayed worked really well how they did it. They had quality assurance and sustainability, structural quality, waste and carbon footprints along the entire continuance of the project. They used Multiplex's document control system whenever they had design changes, and they inspected at different construction milestones along the way. Finally was the importance of familiarity. It was a monumental project, specifically in timber use, and the teams involved didn't have a lot of experience with timber. They did a lot of training and prototyping to become familiar with the behavior of timber and the risks of using it, which was a large time and money investment. But even then, they still had trouble working with some of the large structures, such as the portal frame. So this was obviously a challenge that they chose to overtook and did still present them with some issues during development.